Hey everybody, welcome back to On Stage, Off Stage. I'm your host, George Sapio, and this is episode number 143, July of 2021. Our guest this month is Michele A. Miller. Michele is a nonprofit consultant, an archaeologist, a mother, and the playwright of the second of our 2021 play reading series featuring roles for women over 50. Michele's play is called Invisible Foe, and we will hear that play in a few seconds, but hey, stick around because immediately afterwards, we will feature an interview with Michele herself. But for now, On Stage, Off Stage is proud to present Michele A. Miller's play, Invisible Foe. The parts to be played are Carol, a woman in her 60s, played by Maura Stevens, and Jamie, originally written as flexible gender. She is between 35 to 50 and is played by Marissa Biondolillo. Invisible Foe takes place at the front door of a typical suburban home. The time is spring 2020. The COVID-19 pandemic is raging.
Mom? Mom?
Jamie takes out her cell phone and dials.
Mom, I'm waiting outside. Yeah, the front door.
Door starts to open.
Jamie, what are you doing here?
You told me to be here at 9 o'clock and it's 9.
Oh, right. Sorry, I got distracted.
Oh, of course.
I'm cleaning out the closet.
The closet? Do you really think that's what you should be doing now?
I have to do this now. I don't have any choice. There are moths, Jamie. Moths in the closet, eating holes in everything.
But Mom,
Don't mom me. I've got to get all this stuff out of here and clean everything. Clothes, shoes, even all those silly bow ties he thought made him look distinctive. Then I have to vacuum all the shelves, the floor, even the ceiling.
Mom, really? Now? Is that important? Just close the closet door for a while. There are so many more important things we have to deal with. Did you find those papers I asked you to look for?
No.
Mom!
Jamie, I told you I've been cleaning the closet. There are literally dozens of moths flying around in there.
Okay, Mom, I get it. That's gross. But the bank statements, insurance documents, the investment accounts, are you looking for those in the closet?
Of course not, Jamie. Don't be ridiculous. Your father kept all his papers in his office, I told you. Neat labeled files in every drawer. Knowing him, they're organized alphabetically and by date, and 6 other ways too. It shouldn't be a problem. It'll just take a little while to go through all 10 file cabinets to find what you want.
Not for me. Mom, you need to get the estate.
Those little suckers are in the closet all day and night, eating away at those beautiful clothes. There are holes in your dad's cashmere sweater, the blue crew neck that matched his eyes so nicely. And you should see the Swiss cheese they made of his brown cardigan, the baggy old one he loved so much.
I thought you hated that sweater. You said it should be burned.
Well, not anymore. I'm not letting those little winged devils eat their way through all his things, even his nice wool suits. Do you know how much those cost? The Brioni and that bespoke one he had made in London? Your father lived in those suits. It's not like he's the casual Friday sort of man. No, not your dad. No khakis and a sweater at work for him.
True, he did believe in dressing the part. I don't think he even owned a pair of sweats, did he?
Sweats? Not bloody likely. If he did, those damn moths wouldn't bother eating them anyway. They seem to only go after the good stuff, the cashmere and mohair, even his best wool slippers. Now, don't you see why I have to get rid of them? Why I need to take every single thing out of the closet, wipe down every shelf, vacuum every surface.
But it's 9 p.m. Surely that can wait.
No waiting. You wait with these insidious bastards and they just get worse and worse, multiply exponentially. Didn't we learn the hard way about all that? One day it's 5 and nobody cares. And then the next day it's 25 and still nothing. But then after that, it's 600 something, and then thousands and thousands, and by then it's too late.
Mom, can't you just let it go for a while?
No, I already made that mistake. That stubborn husband of mine with his, boy, it's nothing. Hey, it's just a cough. He always accused me of being a worrywart and said I was making mountains out of molehills. Well, maybe he didn't worry enough.
Well, you worry enough for all of us.
Clearly that wasn't enough. Nobody listens to me. I told him to stop eating so much junk food and too much red meat. You know, he had a burger every day for
I
lunch.
don't think that was the issue, Mom. It's a global
Not
pandemic.
the issue that he was a good 30 pounds overweight. You don't read the papers? Age, weight, and smoking. Those are the risk factors. None of us are getting any younger, you know. I'm going to be 80 next year.
I know. That's why you need to be careful and not tire yourself out. You need to take care of yourself, too.
I am taking care of myself. I'm getting rid of these noxious little critters that are taking over my house. I don't have any tolerance for these little beasts. I am not letting them take over here. They've done enough harm, you understand? We've had enough damage here.
I get it, Mom. But you can't keep out every danger. Things happen. It's a dangerous world.
Now who's crazy? We are being told that we can keep everything out. All we have to do is isolate ourselves at home. Isolate at home. Alone. Not with thousands of moths. I have to get them out. Don't you understand? I have to get rid of them.
I understand, Mom. You are right. The moths are bad. But you don't have to fight them all yourself.
I don't. You want I should have the exterminator over? A complete stranger? You can't come in my house, but some total stranger? I don't know where he's been. Do you?
Fine, not a professional, but can't you get some sprays or traps or something?
Sprays and traps? Like with pesticides? Are you kidding? And waft toxic chemicals inside my house? I'm breathing in here all day, aren't I? Not supposed to leave at my age, even to get groceries. Trapped in this big wooden box we call home. I don't even open the door except for you. They leave the packages on the porch. So I don't want any damn killer chemicals floating around in the air. Invisible, deadly chemicals just suspended in the atmosphere, drifting into every nook and cranny until I inhale them. Deadly molecules filling my lungs. Don't you think we've had enough of that?
It's not quite the same thing, Mom.
To you, maybe it isn't. It is to me. Enough things in the air out there that could kill me. I don't need to spray anything toxic in here.
Okay, I get it. No sprays. But you still don't have to go batshit crazy just because of a few bugs.
A few bugs eating through your father's things? They must have been there God knows how long. Maggots eating through his clothes day after day. And we had no idea. Then next thing you know, you pick up a sweater and it's full of holes. See? Totally ruined. And that's it, isn't it? You realize there they are, completely taking over, and there's nothing you can do about it. Nothing. Not a goddamn thing. Everything. Ruined.
It's okay. It's okay. It's really going to be okay. They're just clothes.
How can you say that? Just clothes. It's going to be okay? Really? I wasn't even able to say goodbye, Jamie. We walked into the hospital together. He didn't even feel that sick, really, just some trouble breathing and a little cough. And next thing you know, they're admitting him with pneumonia, and I never saw him again. That was it. He's in the hospital. He's on a ventilator. 3 days later, he's dead, and I wasn't allowed to visit. Wasn't able to say goodbye.
I know. Mom, I know. It was too risky with your age and your history.
Your father died completely alone in a hospital, surrounded by strangers.
I know.
He was here one day and then he was gone. Well, I'm going to make sure his clothes aren't eaten away in the dark. They don't just disappear too.
Right, Mom. I understand. I love you, Mom. I guess I don't say it often enough, but you know I love you, right?
I love you too, sweetie.
Jamie looks at her phone screen, reading intently.
Okay, Mommy. So it says here that heat kills the moths and their eggs. So you need to launder all the clothes and dry at high heat. Anything too damaged, you can bag and bring here, and I'll dispose of it. Bring me anything you want to dry clean, too. Meanwhile, vacuum up every surface and wipe with a wet rag to pick up any eggs. You got that, Mom? Then we can order these special plastic sweater bags, put everything inside. I'm ordering them now. How many do you think we'll need? Don't worry. We're going to get those moth bastards, okay? I can't come in, but damn it, we are going to do this together.
That was Invisible Foe by Michele A. Miller. Carol was played by Maura Stevens, and Jamie was played by Marissa Biondelillo. Stage directions were read by Ithaca acting legend Milo Bohack. As always, we feature an interview with the playwright, and Michele and I had a great talk about the play and the way it sums up a lot of the disturbing effects that this pandemic has had on so very many of us. Because the dynamics between the two characters, I mean, one is understandably in a panic, and I kept thinking about character outside and her helplessness. Not being able to come in, not being able to oversee what's going on, not being able to lend a hand with contact in proximity and being held at bay. And that is a sign of the times. You can't get close. You can't, you know, I'm a hugger kind of person, you know, I'm in theater, so we hug a lot, and but we don't do that anymore. And just the fact that she was kept outside the whole time without being able to come in and possibly, it's frustrating.
And we've all felt that with family members that, you know, that we don't live with, you know, extended family members, where you, especially on holidays or occasions where they are going through something, where you want to comfort them, that you can't be there. And, you know, my parents are older, and I had to be more protective of them, and I didn't see them for a year. You know, that's hard for me, but also really hard for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the normal family bonds are now stretched apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a horrible thing that we're all going through here. It's the new normal. The new normal is not acceptable in many cases, especially when it comes to being a family member.
Yeah. And then, you know, you have the internal dynamics. I know with my, like, cause I'm both a mom and a daughter, so I can see it from both sides, and what's going through with my children who are teenagers now. And teens, I mean, the main thing about being a teen is separating from your parents and spending more time with people of your own age and becoming independent. And for them, this has been particularly hard because they're stuck at home with mom and dad, or just mom, or in my case. And that's so hard, because that's not what you need to be doing as a teen, you know? Yeah. And then it's, you know, you get all that the conflict in the house and nowhere to go. So all this stuff is swirling in my mind, you know, as I'm writing plays right now, coming out in different ways.
Yeah, we've all got to think of a new form of reality where the freedom we had no longer exists, and how do we deal with that? And while we're dealing with it, we have to write about it.
Well, I think writing about it is how we deal with it. For me, it's one of the ways I've been able to deal with things. And also now, as things are starting to open up, I think you're seeing different reactions from different people.
Right.
Some who are like embracing that and are like throwing off the mask and with abandon doing everything. And some people who are kind of like, I feel like we're more like moles coming out into the light and not sure, you know, looking around like, do I run back into my little tunnel? And not even sure how to interact anymore. You know, everything that we knew is changed, right? So you say you're a hugger, and I don't know if you feel comfortable hugging people anymore, even if they're, you know, you're in a room and everyone's vaccinated and supposedly it's okay.
Uh-huh.
We're not sure how to be. So that's going to take some time. It's a whole separate reality. It just keeps changing. It's never the same for long.
Exactly. And I am not comfortable with it. Even if I was in a room full of vaccinated people, the reality of the pandemic, which, I mean, up until now, for most of us, for many of us, it's been a science fiction story. We go to the movies and we see it and we walk out of the movie theater and we go, it's not real. And we go on our merry way without a thought. But now it is. And, it's not like previous pandemics. It's not like AIDS or something like that where you needed intense physical contact. This is, you're breathing next to somebody.
Yeah.
Or you're sweating next to somebody, or, suddenly you're aware of these horrible little microbes that can zap you without even knowing about it.
And they're invisible, and all that. Yes. It's all that invisibility, I think, where in the beginning, we at first we couldn't, have a concept of how far our breath goes.
Yeah.
And now I think we've almost become like a little force field around us. We're almost afraid of anything because we're more aware of that space and that air. And where's that air been? And when you're inside versus outside and all that. But the visibility of these little microbes is really scary. And I think when I was dealing with the moths, the thing is, it's not really the moths that you see. It's the little whatever larvae that you don't see beforehand that really destroy your clothes. And that's where I got the metaphor for myself. I was like, I don't even see these things. I just see what the damage that they did afterwards.
Yeah, when you can't see the enemy, that's the really scary thing, because you don't know how to defend yourself. Yeah. You mentioned that you were an archeologist, and that absolutely fascinates me. How long did you do that? When did you do that? And what were you doing in Turkey?
Yeah, well, I was an archaeologist. I still am. It's like one of those things you never fully leave.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
But I studied anthropology, and archaeology was my specialty in college, and I sort of fell into that. Now looking back, I realize why. But at the time, I was like, this is interesting. I'll take this class, and I'll take another class in it. And I had started off as a drama major. And I switched to anthropology really in my freshman year because I was like, well, this is fun. I'll keep doing this. And now looking back, I realized it allowed me to do several things that I wanted to do. And one was travel. So you travel to wherever you're doing your field work. And I enjoyed traveling. I like going to other places. I love kind of looking into the past. And I like making stories, and most people don't realize the story part and how it connects to me today is that I'm still a story maker. I've always been a story maker. But in archaeology, especially the archaeology that I did, which was prehistory, you're taking a little bit of information. Think about it. If you're looking at a culture, for me, it was 10,000 years ago. That was basically the period that I specialized in. But even if it was 500 years ago, you're getting a certain amount of evidence. And then you're trying to figure out what was going on around that evidence. And that's story making. We don't put it that way when we're writing the articles, but it basically is. So so I got into it through college. I originally wanted to work in Peru, but at the time, that's where the field work was I was going to start with, because that was what my advisor in the anthropology department was working in. And the dig that we were going to go to was basically there was a lot of unrest in the country at that time. And the people who were living there, the Peruvian people who were part of the excavation, it was done with them. There was actually, I think somebody was murdered. And it was, anyway, the excavation was canceled. It was not the time to be going to Peru, unfortunately. And I looked around for where else I could. I was just an underclassman in college. I was going to Stanford University, I should say that. And there was a classics professor who actually husband and wife who were both classics professors, and they had field work in Greece, and I ended up going there, and I continued working there and ended up going to graduate school and got my dissertation, and so I started, my dissertation is in Greece, for all over, including the islands, but then I started doing field work in Israel, postgraduate. And Turkey was just one of those places that, it's related to the world that I was in. I mean, in terms of where the peoples were moving around that I was studying. Sure. And a really interesting place to go. So
when you say field work, what does that entail? I mean, because all I know about archaeology is what I see from the movies. So in my mind, you're on your knees with a little teeny brush, scraping dust off. Yeah.
Sometimes you are. Yeah. Well, that's why I use the word field work rather than excavation, because it's not always an excavation. The work I was doing in Greece in the beginning was survey work, where you're actually walking along the ground and you're looking for things that you could see on top of the ground. Because how do you know where to dig, right? You have to figure that out. Where are the sites? And unless there's, larger remains on the ground, like, still some kind of, foundations or something, then you look on the ground and you find materials that might come up, maybe when people are plowing, or just, they remove some kind of other feature, trees are removed, and you see pottery if it's a pottery period, or you see stone tools if it's a period that doesn't have pottery. And you can date those if you're people who have been studying this long enough. And it takes, in some ways, I started doing survey work first, and that was good training, because you really have to have a good eye. You have to be able to walk along the ground at a reasonable rate and still notice things that are lying on the ground that are human made. And you have to train your eye to be able to, in the very beginning, I remember it was like the first week we'd pick up stuff and we go to a professor, isn't this something? And he'd be like, yeah, it's a nice rock, you have to train your eye. And it takes a while. It does take a while. And then I was the person, years later saying that to my students. But yes, that's how I started. So that's why I use the word field work. But then, I did do a lot of excavation work, and I co-directed an excavation in Israel for a number of years for a pottery Neolithic site called Shara Galan, which means Gate of the Golan. It was a site in northern Israel, which is right on the apex between Jordan, modern Israel, and modern Syria. It's a interesting place. But in previous times, of course, that had no meaning at all, obviously. And we're talking about, and this is 10,000 years ago. Yeah. And it was a small village of the Neolithic period, meaning, new lithics, new stone tools, but it's known for pottery and known for farming. That's the first farming period. So, which is really important in what we call the Levant, because that's where much of this was first, the first Neolithic farming. So anyway, that's what I did, but I told stories about those people. So getting back to, that sort of thing, what my specialty was ornamentation. So jewelry, I guess we would say, right, and small kinds of art like figurines and things like that. That's what I specialized in. And a lot of the time you have things like that are figurative, and you're trying to figure out why, what is the meaning behind them? And you can tell stories about that, but, using the evidence, using where it was found, the context, using evidence from ethnography, what are people doing with similar stuff today or in recent times? But you still have to tell the story and in some way to make it work for human beings.
Well, it sounds like playwriting. You're looking at people around you and trying to figure out what makes them tick, why they do things, why they dress the way they do, why they present themselves, why they use this particular word instead of that particular word. And, it's to make a really, obviously lame analogy. We're all sitting here with our little brushes, pulling the dust off people around us, trying to figure out what story they have that we need to tell.
No, that's a really good analogy. And I think it's true. I mean, there's always so many, and you can use the analogy of layers too. There's so many layers, and in a good play, you have more than one layer, right? You have the, initial thing that might be happening, but then you have the underneath what's really going on and what the metaphors are. And it's the same thing, you know, when you're working on a site and you start digging it and you see like, oh, there's a row of rocks. Okay, where's a row of rocks? Then the next thing it's a wall, and then it's a floor, and then, you know, what's on the floor, and then you start realizing it's a room. Oh wait, there's like burnt bone in that room, and there's some cooking pots in that room. Oh, it's a kitchen, and oh, this is where people cook this. What did they eat? And you know, you start to make the story around the things that you're finding.
Yep, it sounds fascinating. I'm sure there's a lot of boring sitting around waiting for things to happen time, but I'm sure those moments of discovery are just irreplaceable.
You know, I know that, you know, other people say, oh, it's a really boring. I never found a day on any excavation boring. You're always, you know, people say, well, do you ever find anything? That's like the question I get. I mean, do I ever? Every day you find something. It might not be fascinating to the average person. If I picked up and put in my hand this little bits of chipped stone, that might not be fascinating to you, but again, each one of those pieces tells a story, especially when put together.
Right. So, to you, it's evidence. To me, it's a rock.
Right. And it's everything. I found all of that fascinating, whether it was the little bit of bone or, you know, we found a whole figurine. Oh my God. You know, you had days like that, obviously. And those are the days that, you know, get in the news and so on, but it's all putting it all together to me. That's really the most interesting part.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful, actually. I'd like to touch on, before we take off, you wrote down that you write a lot about women's issues.
Well, obviously, we're living in this sort of post-Me Too time, but it's really, I think Me Too started opening questions and opening a way of thinking that still hasn't been, we haven't gotten there.
Oh, totally. No, not yet, not even close.
Right. And I think that this is a time where I'm trying to explore all of that. Why are there like such big disparities between how women and men are treated? And why is it so hard to, even now for someone, for a woman, like, and I sometimes think some of the plays that I write, the young women maybe, oh, well, we're done with that. We're past that. And then I write these things and then they come to me and they're like, no, we're still dealing with this stuff. Like things that happened to me in college, which I hate to say was decades ago. And I think, well, you know, women nowadays, that maybe they're not dealing with that. And they're like, no, we're still dealing with that. And it makes me think, you know, how even just getting that out there and laying it on the table so we all can see it is sort of what I want to do. And, you know, and again, when I say women's issue, it ranges everything from, I've dealt with postpartum depression. I've dealt with, you know, infertility and loss. That's like more recent stuff as a mother. And then I've dealt with domestic violence, and I even dealt with the inequities that happen as girls become women.
Yeah.
So it's the full range, and you just find these things, you know, keep happening. So.
Yeah, I wrote a play a number of years ago, which, okay, first of all, you know, full disclosure, I'm an old white male. Right. So my perspective on this is I'm hugely, massively uninformed, or I was. And I wrote a play that involved abuse, aggravated abuse. And in the research that I did with friends who were counselors, friends who treated women who had been assaulted, I got an education I could not possibly believe. And the number of women that were affected by this was unbelievably high. I was absolutely shocked. And in the time since then, I'm realizing, no, I think they were actually underestimating.
Yep. Yeah. Well, that's absolutely one of the things that when I write these things, the people who come to me afterwards and say, this affected me, it's all walks of life. And I, you know, I wrote a play, which now is actually a film, Change of Plans, which deals with domestic violence. And the people who've responded to it, and it's been men too. It's not only been men,
sure.
But more prevalently women, you know, from all walks of life and all races. And so I think that's important to think about.
Right.
it doesn't matter. And I actually wrote it to be a wealthier person or upper middle class, because sometimes we don't realize that. It cuts across all these different.
It ignores all barriers or all levels of society.
And all societies. I mean, if you look around the world too. So in America, at least we have more resources. And if you look at other places in the world where women don't have the resources at all.
I know. Yeah. Michele A. Miller, it's been wonderful speaking to you and highly interesting. Thank you so much for your play, Invisible Foe. And stay safe and stay healthy.
You too. And thanks for having me.
Hey kids, thanks for listening to On Stage, Off Stage. On Stage, Off Stage is produced monthly, and all of our shows can be found at onstageoffstage.org and also on iTunes. If you enjoy what we do, please recommend us to your friends. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at OnOffStage. And if you are a theater artist with an upcoming project of interest or work in a part of theater we haven't covered yet, or know of someone in the theater who would make really good chat, send us a note at info@onstageoffstage.org. Onstage Offstage believes in and advocates for a world where all people are free to live their lives as they wish, in peace and without fear. We believe in universal respect, diversity, and equality in all areas of life for all people, no matter what their nationality, race, religion, age, sexual status, or gender. Onstage Offstage will never promote or endorse those who seek to diminish others because of who they are. I'm George Sapio. Thank you once again for listening, and please, kids, stay safe, be careful for yourself and for those with whom we share this rock. And as always, happy theatering to all of you.